A Facebook mail facility center was evacuated on Monday after a routine check found a mail possibly containing sarin and nerve agent. A facility located near company headquarters has been put under restrictions by the authorities. 4 buildings were evacuated and 3 others cleared for people to come back into. The substance was yet to be identified completely, and additional testing is yet to be conducted. The Federal Bureau of Investigation will be assisting the investigation. No injuries have been reported in the case. Iraqi Prime Minister Adil Abdul Mahdi has sought to curb the powers of the Iran-backed influential Shiite Muslim militia. Mahdi has issued a decree ordering the militia to integrate more closely into the formal armed forces. The move has been seen as one to calm the United States after several unclaimed attacks on bases of Iraq hosting U.S. forces. The U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo had warned Iraq of consequences if they did not control the militia groups. Meanwhile, Baghdadis have welcomed the move, and groups have been given time till July 31st to abide by the new regulations. Those not abiding would be considered outlaws. Laurentino Cortizo was sworn in as the new president of Panama on Monday. Cortizo replaces outgoing President Juan Carlos Varela after winning the tightest election in Panama recent history. The 66-year-old triumphed with only 31% of the vote while contesting for the Democratic Revolutionary Party. The new president vowed to stoke the economy by increasing transparency in the system. Cortizo has inherited a slowing economy with growing public frustration over official corruption. The ceremony was attended by presidents of Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, and the Dominican Republic. Sudan civilian opposition on Monday informed about the death of 9 people as a result of clashes with security forces during mass demonstrations for a transition to civilian rule. Thousands of Sudanese had flooded the streets of capital Khartoum and other areas on Sunday in the biggest protest since security forces cleared a protesters' camp last month. The protesters have been calling on the military to hand over power to civilians following the ouster of longtime President Omar al-Bashir. The country's military had seized power. Al-Bashir stepped down on 11th April this year following mass protests. U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday signed a $4.6 billion bill to address the migrant surge at the U.S.-Mexico border. The bill had been approved by the American Congress last week. Of the total amount, $2.9 billion is for the Department of Health and Human Services to care for the unaccompanied children and place them in suitable homes. The remaining amount has been given to the Department of Homeland Security to provide basic necessities of food, shelter, and medical care to the migrants and detained. The U.S. administration has to care for thousands of migrants coming from Mexico every day as the Congress continues to refuse granting money for a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. A man and his young daughter who drowned while trying to cross into Texas were laid to rest on Monday. This was a week after a heartbreaking image of their floating in the Rio Grande had propped up. About 200 relatives and friends followed, their bodies being carried out inside the municipal cemetery in southern San Salvador. The graves of both were in a section of the cemetery named after a famous Archbishop, Saint Oscar Romero. Romero had devoted himself to the poor but had been assassinated in 1980. Many from countries like El Salvador, Honduras have recently been trying to reach the U.S. borders in search of better opportunities. Following a visit organized by the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, a group of lawmakers have decried the conditions at the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol stations in Texas. Chairman of the caucus, Joaquin Castro, has said that the system was broken and people's human rights were still being abused. He blamed the Trump administration for the situation. The visit came on the same day when head of the U.S. Border Patrol termed sexist posts and comments mocking the migrant deaths over Facebook as completely inappropriate. The caucus expected a full investigation into such incidents. After the short meeting between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump, both have agreed to take their dialogue further. U.S. State Secretary Mike Pompeo has confirmed that the two leaders will hold detailed discussions this month. This would be the third meeting between the two for talks on the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. Trump became the first U.S. president to set foot in North Korea on Sunday when he met Kim in the demilitarized zone between the two Koreas and agreed to resume the stalled nuclear talks. The Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen will be visiting the U.S. this month for at least 4 days on the first leg of a diplomatic visit to the Caribbean countries. The Taiwanese president's visit has provoked China to anger. Beijing sees the self-ruling democratic island as part of China's territory, awaiting reunification. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has urged the U.S. not to allow the Taiwanese president to transit and to cautiously and appropriately handle Taiwan-related issues. This comes as a warning to Washington to avoid any adverse impact of Sino-U.S. relations. Latest from Iran, the International Atomic Energy Agency spokesman has confirmed that Iran's stock of low-enriched uranium has exceeded the maximum limit set under the 2015 nuclear deal. According to the IAEA reports, Iran's stock of low-enriched uranium has exceeded 300 kilogram limit. Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif had earlier said that Iran had breached the limit of its stockpile of low-grade uranium set under the 2015 deal with the world powers. At least 34 people have been killed in a Taliban attack that rocked the diplomatic enclave in the Afghan capital in Kabul. Spokes were blowing from the high-security enclave. A Taliban terrorist stormed the area in morning. At least 3 gunmen entered a building soon after an explosive-laden truck exploded near the U.S. Embassy and Afghan Defense Ministry. Security forces have eliminated 2 of the terrorists in the ensuing clashes. At least 100 people, including 30 children, have been injured. They were shifted to a nearby hospital. Over 30 children are among the injured. Tunisian politicians have called for transparency on President Brigade SAB's health after he was hospitalized last week with a serious illness. This comes after a spokeswoman for the presidency said there was a marked improvement in the health of 92-year-old SABC. Tunisians are concerned that the cradle of the Arab Spring uprisings could descend into political instability in case of a prolonged vacancy of the president. At least 12 people have died, while 4 others sustained injuries after a wall collapsed near a school in Mumbai's Malad East area. The compound wall collapsed on the hutments due to heavy downpour. Many are fear trapped under the debris. National Disaster Response Force or the NDRF, Fire Brigade and police rushed to the spot. Some people were rescued by civilians before the arrival of the Fire Brigade and NDRF team. 13 people have been admitted to different hospitals. Mumbai may have had a delayed start, but in the 3 days of pouring, it has broken records. The city has recorded second highest June rains in 10 years. 234.8 millimeters of rain has been recorded. This is classified as extremely heavy downpour. The downpour has caused waterlogging in many parts of the city and has taken a toll of the transportation. Catherine, the Duchess of Cambridge, took children on a hunt for insects and plants during a nature safari at the Hampton Court Flower Show in southwest London. The royal was joined by children from local Hampton Hill Junior School. The crew looked for special flowers and unique features among the long grass. The Duchess then led children from a hospital on a tour of the space. The Duchess is a keen advocate of outdoor play for children and their development. She had a hand in designing the Back to Nature Garden, which first debuted at the Chelsea Flower Show. While Catherine led an outdoor camp for children, her father-in-law, the Prince of Wales, celebrated the 50th anniversary of his investiture. Charles began his summer tour of Wales on Monday. This comes 50 years after he was formally invested with his title in 1969. At the age of 20, the prince's first stop on the tour was, in fact, Llandaff Cathedral in Cardiff. This was for a memorial service honouring the first of the Queen's Dragoon Guards. Following the ceremony, Charles met with members of the public and signed the cathedral's guest book. A 70-year-old prince is the oldest and longest-serving heir apparent in British history. Some of the world's brightest minds in astronomy have gathered at the Chilean Andes ahead of the solar eclipse. In fact, one of the observatories there will host national and foreign scientists traveling to the area to observe the eclipse. Observatories around the world have also supplied specialist equipment to the teams to capture and investigate the phenomenon. Scientists will be paying particular attention to a specific moment in the eclipse. This moment in the spotlight is when the moon blocks the sun's disk and the white light of the outer solar atmosphere is revealed. Business magnate Warren Buffett is donating around $3.6 billion of his company, Berkshire Hathaway, stocks to give, to charities. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is one of them. This is reportedly his biggest contribution to date. The Bill Gates Foundation receives 4/5 of his total donation. The rest of the money will go to a foundation named after his late wife and charities run by his children. Two-time world champions India are in action today in the World Cup as they take on neighbours Bangladesh. Just 2 days after their first defeat of the World Cup, India will look to assure themselves of a place in the semis with a win in Birmingham. Bangladesh have had an impressive World Cup campaign with victories against South Africa, Afghanistan and West Indies, but they have come up short against the big sides. India were also dealt a blow on Monday when all-rounder Vijay Shankar was ruled out of the tournament due to a toe fracture. He has been replaced by batsman Mayank Agarwal, who's yet to play a one-day international.